advice to people like where I was stressed about it, go to college so much, like just do good, like do good things.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Hi. So it's a great pleasure to be able to welcome you tonight, especially also because I don't get to see many of you all too often. I know you're few of you, especially the officers, but most of you don't even recognize me. I'm the person with the Austrian accent. I'm the Dean of the School of Management, and in a way I'm responsible for your education if you are in a business, accounting, economics, or hospitality undergraduate program or in one of our graduate programs. So we started this Fireside Chat series last year in collaboration with your clubs and associations, as we thought that very often when we do regular events, the student voice gets drowned out in a way. You never get a chance to really be in an intimate setting with some of the industry insiders, industry executives that we are associated with. So we wanted to create an event that is really intimate and a little bit cheesy as well, right? So I think we win the prize for that. Where you get to interact with top executives before an event, during the event, and after the event. We are trying, when I say after the event for today, I think we're in a little bit of a time limit.
We'll be fine.
We're trying to wrap up the official portion by about 6:45 or so, as some of you are grad students here and need to go to your 7 o'clock classes, but Sandy will be able to hang around for a while after the official part and is available for individual conversations then. So, which brings me to our guest of honor, Sandy Brown. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to see you again, as you've recently moved out of the area. Sandy Brown has been on the Dean's Executive Council for about 3 years? Five years already. Yeah. 5 years now. The Dean's Executive Council is an advisory group that advises me and the leadership of the school on strategic questions, but it also helps us to create visibility for the school. So we are bringing in people who have vast networks and who have big brands behind them. And that brings me to a little bit of insight on your career, Sandy, which is she is currently an independent board member of a large publicly traded mutual fund. And very importantly, Sandy is one of only about 300 female board members on a publicly traded fund, which really makes her unique on a national level. Before that, she was president and CEO of Transamerica, which is one of the largest financial advisory groups in the country. And for the rest, I would like to hear a little bit from you, Sandy. Tell us a little bit about your career path.
Okay, thank you. So I'd really like for you to feel welcome to stop and ask questions if you have any. I had a very unusual pathway into financial services. I came from small town Indiana, and my dad wanted me to be a nurse or a dental hygienist because he thought I'd like to stay home and have babies. He didn't know me very well. But I did become a dental hygienist, and I practiced dental hygiene for 7 years. I really wanted to be in the business world from the get-go. But I went ahead and followed my dad's dream for a while before I got so bored I couldn't stand it. And so I went back and took accounting and ended up going into business as a CPA and went into a large financial institution, a bank, that became part of Chemical Bank, and Chemical Bank was soon purchased by Chase. And so I started out working in financial institutions in the banking world and always worked for Fortune 100 companies. And that if you can start out in a Fortune 100 company in your career, that will carry you through for every other interview you ever have in your lifetime. I can assure you of that. So I started out as a trust auditor and got an opportunity to start managing in operations a new mutual fund company we had. And ended up doing that. Did that for 4 years before moving to California. Went to work for another Fortune 100 company, Security Pacific, that got bought by Bank of America, another Fortune 100 company. Worked there for 8 years in mutual funds. And then when we got bought out by another Fortune 100 company, I moved down the street to Transamerica. And then we got bought out by a company in the Netherlands, Aegon. And I worked for them for 11 years. So I was the only woman in the room in many meetings for most of my career. Fortunately, that's changing. And there are a lot more women entering the financial services industry. And there is lots of room at the top for women in this industry. And I strongly encourage the women in the room to make your way through the industry. There's a lot of room there for you. But when I was coming up through the ranks, there were very, very few women. But there's also room for men too, but there's lots of room for women because there are so few women in the industry. So in a nutshell, it was banking, 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 and then insurance and banking for my career.
Thank you. But by the way, how this works is we'll have a little bit of a conversation here, but pretty shortly we'll open it up to questions from you. So Sandy, you went from dental hygienist to accounting. What sparked your interest in the accounting and finance world?
So I knew I wanted to move into the business world, and I had patients in my dental hygiene practice, working for these dentists. I had these phenomenal patients. I worked in a practice where my patients were incredible business people. Texas Instruments was a client. A lot of the patients coming in were from Texas Instruments, or from the medical center in downtown Houston. And then we moved up to the Dallas area, and so we had all these patients that were all really high-profile business people. So I started interviewing my patients. Oh, what kind of degree do you have? How did you get there? What kind of business background did you have to have in order to get that job? And so I realized that if I became a CPA, I could do just about any job in business that there was. And so that's what I set my mind to do. So I just set out on a mission to, boom, I was getting my CPA, come hell or high water, and that's what I did.
Patrick Manning, great plug for the accounting program, right? So you've spent considerable time in the financial services and finance industry. Has that industry changed a lot from back then when you started to what it is now?
Well, it's far more open to women, for sure. And it's changed dramatically in the way, from the standpoint of what the financial instruments are. You know, when I started out, we had stocks and bonds, and they were pretty straightforward. Now with all these derivatives that are out there and the types of investments that you have available, it's far more complicated. The regulation's far more complicated. There's a lot more opportunity for people who really like to get into the details of what the financial instruments are all about and how they work. You know, when I started out, we didn't have computers. So, you know, I mean, when I started out, we were doing COBOL programming. And
Anybody heard of COBOL? Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I have a bachelor's degree in technology, and we were doing COBOL programming back then, and we didn't have any kind of technology like there is now. There was, it was, you know, you had a 10 key, and it was just a whole different dynamic than it is now. So there's a lot more opportunity. Another thing I might mention, though, this is an interesting topic that came up at a meeting I was at the other day. So let's think about what you're studying now versus what I studied, right? Because I studied some interesting accounting things then. There is, if you think about artificial intelligence, think about that right now for a minute. Artificial intelligence now is let's say it's in its infancy. They predict in the next 5 years that about 300 to 800 million jobs are going to be lost from artificial intelligence. And most of those are going to come from the financial services industry. Okay? Now think about that for a second. That's not going to come from people like you. That's going to come from people who are doing 10 key by touch and people who are doing the lower level jobs. People like you who are getting the education and who are learning and who are going to teach the programs that are the learning programs. You're the ones who are going to be teaching these robots what to do and what to think. You're the ones who are going to have the jobs. You're not going to be the ones losing the jobs. It's going to be the other people that are losing the jobs. So remember that. So when you start thinking about AI, remember that what you're doing now is what's going to be able to allow you to be the people who are going to keep your jobs in the future. So as you're talking to your younger brothers and sisters or your friends, be encouraging them to get out there and get the educations. Be encouraging your friends who are above you, elder people in your organizations. Go get those executive MBAs. Go get that education. Go get that information that they're going to need to be able to retain their jobs in the future.
I wanted to come back to the changes. So with that increasing degree of sophistication and with the advent of technology, has that also changed your role as a leader in companies?
Hugely changed the role of the leader, because remember that as everything changes, as a leader you have to change. So one of the interesting things about my jobs, I have never had a job description when I took a job. You know, usually when you go in and you interview for a job, you know what the position's going to be. When I got hired at Security Pacific, I sent a resume off to the head of a department, and I said, I just moved here, just moved to LA from Houston, I'm looking for a new opportunity. They brought me in and they said, you know, we're looking for somebody who's just smart, who has a background, who's done a bunch of things like you've done. You've been an auditor, you've been in mutual funds, you've been in securities. We just want somebody who can come in and look at our department and see what we need. Just come in, we don't know what your job title is going to be. We'll bring you in as a vice president and you can figure it out. Okay? So they did, and I ended up working there 8 years. Transamerica. Sent my resume in. You know, listen, we're just looking to hire smart people. We don't know what your job's going to be. Come in, we'll bring you in as a senior vice president, and we'll just figure it out. So I was there 6 months. I said, you know, you guys are paying me too much money. Do you have anything else I can do? They said, yeah, you want to go be the president of the broker-dealer and, you know, something like that, because, you know, we need somebody over there. And I said, yeah, sure. I've never done that before, but yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. They said, you've got 90 days to get all your licenses. And I said, okay. They said, we want you to be a change agent, though. We need somebody to go over there and be a change agent, because we need change over there. I said, okay, fine. So remember that as you're thinking about leadership, you have to be willing to change. If you think you're going to go into a job and have a cushy job and all you're going to do is just manage the way it's been managed before, that's not what a leader is. A leader goes in and figures out what needs to be done to grow the business. How are you going to strategically position the business for growth and future growth and opportunity? Because if you're not there to do that, if you think you're just babysitting a job, you're not going to be in that job. They don't want a babysitter. They want somebody who's going to grow the business. So growth and opportunity is what it's all about.
How big was Transamerica when you were CEO?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
roughly?
roughly. I don't know because they had it divided into so many different business units. So I managed the people who sold the product, but all the product was divvied up into different departments. And so my unit didn't get to count those products as part of the unit, as part of my business unit. So we never knew.
It was like a holding structure.
Yeah,
Can we-
yeah. So I don't really know. I really don't know.
So
And
most
my
of-
business unit was not managed as a profit center.
Got it.
My business unit was to break even. They didn't care whether or not I generated a profit because all of my 3,300 sales guys sold the products of all these other business units. And those business units had to make a profit. My business unit had to break even.
So you spoke about qualities of a leader and change. So we have people sitting here that are anywhere between 19 and maybe 25 years old. Where do you get those skills
Skills to be,
to be a leader?
oh, wow. So think about your past history, you know, whether it was being troop leader of your Girl Scouts or, you know, leader of the cheerleading squad or the leader, captain of your whatever, you know, cheer block or, you know, whatever it was. Those leadership skills you develop your whole life. You know, I started my first business when I was 16. And my sister and I put ourselves through college with the help of our dad. And we walked out of college with no debt because we were managing our businesses. We were managing a business that generated enough income in the summers to put ourselves through college. So, you know, always thinking about how you can be out there and being a go-getter from the time you were knee-high to nothing. You know, I was babysitting at 12, making my own clothes, and doing all that kind of stuff from the time I was little. So, you know, being a leader and being a champion for your family and your friends and that kind of thing.
So is it practice, attitude?
It's attitude. It's being a go-getter. And, you know, I'll have to tell you, you know, you probably, you know, you have kids. I don't have kids, by the way. But I used to be a big pain in the butt to my parents. I know I was because I was always challenging them. It's like, well, why? You know, why do I have to do it that way? You know, I mean, I was on the school board. I was a school board representative and, you know, president of this, that, and the other committee and whatever. And my dad goes, are you going to ever be satisfied? No, I'm not. I'm never going to be satisfied. I'm never going to be satisfied sitting at home doing my homework every night. If my schedule is not back-to-back meetings and doing something, I'm not going to be satisfied. I've got to be doing something all the time. That's the way I am.
So is that what do you think set you apart from others?
Mhm.
Especially also from men, I guess, at the time when you started your career, the world of business was still a little different from what it is today.
Yeah.
Not that it's gotten a lot easier for females to get into the top executive positions, but it's definitely easier than it was during your time.
Yeah, well, you know, if I had an opportunity to sit on the committee that, well, maybe I shouldn't say this, but Senator Hatch said women don't work hard enough the other day. Women didn't want to work hard enough to sit on his committee. I would tell you that he would have had a real difficult time keeping me from sitting on that committee. Because, you know, I put in far more hours than any man in my company. They all left by 7. I was still there till 9 every day, and I came in at 7 every day, and they never showed up before 8. So I put in far more hours than any man in any company I ever worked in. And my bonuses always reflected my time spent in the company. And my bonuses always outshined any man in the company.
So was that because you knew that you had to just work a little harder?
No.
Or is that just your personality?
That's my personality, yeah. I never, ever felt like I was underpaid. My compensation was always competitive with any man in the company. And I always worked at least as hard as any man in the company. And so I never felt underpaid or overworked. I worked as much as I wanted to. And I always took vacation, by the way. Don't ever let one vacation day go by unused. I took 3 weeks straight every year, and I went on fabulous vacations. That job is going to be there when you get back, ladies and gentlemen. Take every vacation day you have, enjoy it, use it, and I took every vacation day I ever had, and you know, it'll be there. Don't worry about it.
Can I have you talk to my boss about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You earn them. You earn them. Take them.
So we also want this to be of real value to you, and I want to provide value to our students in terms of advice that you could give. Is there anything that you wish you had known right out of college or when you made your step into accounting back then?
Yes. There is one big thing that I did wrong, and that was I didn't network enough. That is a big thing. When I told you I worked 7 to 9, I should have been working 7 to 6, and I should have been networking from 6 to 9. Because networking and building your network is far more important than putting in the extra hours. Because if you get laid off a job, you don't have a network to go call on to help you find your next one. How many people in here, raise your hand and be honest, how many people in here feel like they have the most fabulous network in the whole world, that they could call anybody and get a job in 2 weeks? You feel like you have a great network? Good for you. Okay. How many people feel like they could go work this network, this room, and could feel comfortable walking up to anybody in here and introducing themselves? Everybody in here feel like they're really comfortable networking? Wow, good for you. That's really good.
Well, you can't forget these are the creme de la creme, right? These are our clubs and association members and presidents.
That's awesome, because I will tell you that is not usual. That is not normal. And if you can work a room, that is awesome. And you better hone that skill and use it and work it every chance you get. That's the biggest mistake I made. And you need to join a minimum of 3 organizations that are with your field. So like, for example, 100 Women in Finance, some sort of an accounting organization, something that is associated, 3 professional organizations, and then a minimum of 1 charitable organization, minimum of 1, because you will be amazed at how many great contacts you make through your charitable organization. Okay, and I don't care what it is, whether it's Feed the Children or it's, ASPCA, but get involved in something, Red Cross, something that gives you a network of people that's outside your professional organization. Do something that's not with people that you would normally be associated with.
I think one of the reasons why so many hands went up when you asked about the network is it's the CLU environment, right? You're all used to spending time in small groups, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's in a club or in athletics. You expose yourself to others, right? You're not hiding in a lecture hall with 300 other students.
Well, I saw a lot of hands go up, but I didn't see a lot of people walk up to me and introduce themselves to me. Okay? So I would challenge you on that.
Our students are also incredibly polite.
Okay. So Gerhard took me around and introduced me, and I walked up to some of you, but you didn't approach me. So I would challenge you on whether or not you feel comfortable doing it. Okay?
So you've given good advice on what to do. Can you also give us advice on what not to do?
Yes. This is something I will tell you. When you get into the business world, don't ever, ever badmouth anybody. It will bite you in the butt, and it will come back to bite you again and again and again. Don't ever badmouth your boss, your employer, the person you work in the cubicle next to, nobody, never, ever, ever do that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do this in the hall. Don't talk bad about anybody. It's not worth it. It will come back to bite you. Don't do it. If you are out gabbing about somebody and talking trash about somebody, you're not doing your job. Do your job. And make it a point to be positive. That's the best advice I can give you.
Wonderful. So I would like to open it up to questions from the audience. Yes, please.
What was the mutual fund that you worked with that Transamerica? The exact name of the fund?
The name of the fund was the Transamerica Funds.
And you didn't work with like a specific mutual fund? Like manage a mutual fund?
The funds were called the Transamerica Funds. And then we had sub-advisors of those funds. Is that what you're saying?
I was under the impression that you managed
I was not, no, I'm not a CFA. I'm a CPA. And I managed 3,300 of our salespeople who sold those funds and all the other mutual fund companies out there as well. American Funds, BlackRock, everything else out there as well.
Because we're recording,
Oh, microphones, yeah.
I'll run around. So how did you negotiate salary as like a woman? Do you have any tips or, I mean, not just as a woman, but I mean, also there's some stereotypes of, in that realm, but just in general.
So one of the most effective things you can do is don't talk. Let them talk. So when someone says, well, what kind of compensation do you want? Say, well, what are you paying? And then they're going to expect you to say something. Don't say anything. Let them answer the question you asked. What are you paying? And then let them answer you. And then they say, well, what did you get paid at your last job? You say, my last job is not relevant to this conversation. What are you paying for this job? Right? It's not relevant what you made in your last job. And when they ask you for your pay stub at the last job, it's not relevant. You have to give them your pay stub from your last job.
It's actually illegal now in California. Yeah.
Good. When they ask you for your tax return, it's illegal too. Okay?
You mentioned AI earlier and the redistribution of jobs. Historically, when the advent of technology that it would take jobs from one place, in like the 19-teens, the textile mills and whatnot, and like it would put them in other places, and there's concern that AI would take them away completely. Do you think that the advent of AI is more of a, more of a redistribution, or more of kind of more of a takeaway of labor and hours?
So I think initially it's going to be an actual takeaway of jobs and hours until people get used to it and understand how it's going to work. But there's never going to be the takeaway of that interpersonal relationship between, for example, an investment advisor and the client relationship. There's never going to be that. I mean, the other day when I had to make a phone call and have to talk into a phone and try to get them to understand that I needed a copy of a billing statement, that just drove me crazy that I spent 10 minutes saying, I need a copy of my statement, right? So there's never going to, that's never going to happen for me, that I'm going to be happy talking to a phone for 10 minutes on a silly question like that.
So the adjustment is not going to be smooth?
It's not going to be a smooth one for me. Yeah. That change is not going to be smooth for me.
Yeah. Where is it?
You talk about we're always told to build our resume and just keep building our resume, and like that's all we're really meant to do when we go and interview. What key thing would you say we should be focusing on in that sense?
I've looked at lots of resumes, and that's a great question. I think really putting out there key accomplishments. as opposed to all your little jobs? What are your accomplishments? And what did you learn from those jobs? What are the things what really built your resume out of those things that were your accomplishments? So you had a job, but what did you get out of that job? As opposed to, I worked at McDonald's for 10 months. Did you develop some leadership skills? Did you learn how an assembly line worked? And did you figure out a way to improve something on that assembly line? You know, I worked at a job when I was in dental hygiene school that was called the Dental Depot, and it was a dental supply house. And I messed up really bad one day. Rather than sending one single little diamond burr to a dental office, I sent an entire box of burrs. So rather than sending something that was worth about $6, I sent something that was worth about $600 to a dental office, right? And when about a week later, I had to send the same thing out, and I remembered that I sent that other thing out, and I said, oh my gosh, and I went to my boss and I said, I sent the wrong thing out last week. I sent a box of these out. And she goes, do you remember who you sent it to? And I said, yeah. And I said, you know, if we had a map on this bowl up here that had all of these offices like this, somebody like me would understand where these things go and how it worked. And she goes, oh my God, that's a fabulous idea. So things like that if you worked at McDonald's and you realized that you put together something like that, right, that somebody else could learn from, that's the kind of stuff you should put on a resume. Sorry if that was too long-winded, but yes, finally to you. Sorry.
It's no problem, miss. I'm interested in investing and have been advised to try mutual funds. What are some good mutual funds that I should look into? Should I invest in them right now? And are there what avenues should I use to invest in them? Like online or?
Okay, so I can't give you investment advice, right? So
Sorry.
So let me just be real clear about that. So I can't give you individual investment advice. So everybody's on the same page with me as I make these statements, right? So if you go online to a company like Vanguard or American Funds or any other big mutual fund company, BlackRock, they have these investment portfolio evaluators, and you can check these boxes off about how much money you have to invest and how much money your total net worth is, and it will come up with a screener, and it will make recommendations for you as far as how to invest the amount of money that you have available. It will make a recommendation for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah.
First off, good evening and thank you for your time. Just curiosity of question. Earlier in the conversation, you discussed how not a lot of women were in this work field and workforce, and you described that it felt like to me, it said your attitude is kind of what drove you forward. Do you feel like there was a restriction towards women going into that field, or was there just not enough women applying for that field?
Well, there weren't a lot. Let me start out by saying that I was in Texas at the time. And one of my bosses at one point told me, do you not know that women aren't supposed to talk in meetings? Okay. So I told him that may be applicable to certain women you've known in the past, but I'm here now. And I do talk in meetings. I don't really take no for an answer, and I don't put up with attitude. And I've lived in California now long enough that I really don't put up with attitude. my dad was awesome. He had 3 daughters, and he was a tennis coach. And he coached girls tennis and boys tennis. And he taught us that you just go out there and you just have attitude, and you just give it back to them, whether it's on the tennis court or whether it's in the office or wherever it is, and you just give them back the attitude they gave you. And I just lived by that in everything I ever did. And so when the boys on the playground gave me a black eye, I gave them a bloody nose. So, that's just the way I grew up. So whether it was in the boardroom or in the conference room, in the boardroom, wherever it was I said my piece. So I hope that answers your question. So most of the women in Texas knew their place, if you will, and I didn't know mine, and I wasn't about to learn it. Mm-hmm.
Hi. I have a question, especially I have a question regarding when you face like difficult days, when some days are just harder than the others. How do you stay positive? Because that's one of your main message.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know, like you also said, when people ask you for your previous pay, and you ask them back, how do you manage, or how do you respond when they answer with a not so good reply?
So one of the things you do is you just don't answer. Silence is golden. Silence is so golden, when they ask one thing that when they ask you things that you know that they're not supposed to ask you, if you just smile and don't say anything, and then just say something like, "Excuse me, excuse me, what did you say?" And just smile. They usually don't ask you again. So that's one thing. And as far as being positive, it's like, why waste energy being negative? Why, how you can go home and you can dwell on something forever, and you can think about, oh, they said this and I said that, and oh my gosh, did I say the right thing or did I say the wrong thing? Or, God, you can waste so much energy with those negative messages, and, get yourself kind of in this anxiety kind of, turmoil thing, he said that, she said that. Oh my gosh, I didn't say the right thing. Oh gosh, get off that treadmill. You got so many more important things to do in your life. I just try so hard to stay off those treadmills and just go to sleep and think about there's another day out there, and go do something fun. That's what I recommend, if you can do it. Because that anxiety treadmill is just not worth your time and energy. It's hard to do, but if you can put that on a shelf and go do something fun, that's what I would recommend.
So you got to see 3,300 employees that you managed. What would you say was the main difference between those that were at the top and sold a lot of products and those that were kind of just mediocre at the bottom? What really separated those people?
The ones that were at the top had a really positive attitude. That was the biggest thing. Positive attitude, nothing got them down. Nothing. The ones that were at the bottom were whiners. Total whiners. So, and they would spend so much time whining about why they didn't get that client, as opposed to just going out and getting another client. It's like, why waste your time worrying about what you didn't get? Just go get another client. Pick up the phone and start dialing. That was the biggest deal.
Hi, how you doing? I'm actually an accounting major, and my goals so far, like small steps, right? Graduate college, get my CPA license, and go from there. Would you recommend for me to dive into like an accounting company and get my experience then, like, and then work my way up, or go for my master's and then simply go from there?
Oh my gosh, can we talk about that privately?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I need to know you better. I may need to have a conference call with you.
And by the way, Sandy Brown has mentored a number of our MBA and executive MBA students in the past. She's really good at that, so I would take her up on that offer.
Okay.
When you said back to when you were in a company and it got bought, and you were in that company and got bought again, did you do anything differently to stand out or try and keep your job or anything?
No, never. My husband and I have been bought out 14 times. And I'm the one who got laid off twice. He never got laid off. He worked at he sat in the same desk for 4 buyouts. Yeah. No. Never do anything different. You just keep doing your job. If you're a good employee, they keep you. But when the buyouts that I've been through and got laid off was the company that bought me. Like, for example, when I was at Bank of America, my boss reported to the chairman of the board at Bank of America. So it's like, you know, you get bought at that level, you're going. You know, it's not, you just don't get much higher than that. They've got other people they want to bring in at that level.
So it seems like you're very driven and have a chip on your shoulder you keep talking about. How do you develop that over time and use it to your advantage?
Wait a minute, I have a chip on my shoulder? What kind of chip?
In a good way.
In a good way, okay.
Yeah.
You mean I'm just you mean like I'm just like in your face?
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm in your face, yeah, okay.
And so.
But it's a positive in your face, right?
No, it's great. I love it. And so a lot of times I feel like it's easy to let things like adversity weigh you down, and you seem to let it bring you forward.
Yeah.
How do you develop that over time?
So, you know, if you let things bring you down, you will always be whining. You cannot whine. You will just be sitting there in a puddle of tears all your life. You know, how much fun is that going to be, right? Get out there and go for it. Go find something else to do. Don't be sitting around worrying. Don't be sitting around crying. I was on the phone the other day with one of my top producers, and right, I'm still on the phone with my top producers, and I have not worked there for 10 years. So he called me up the other day, and he goes, hey, I was on the phone. We were in the car. I was in the car with Julie the other day, his wife, right? He goes, we're listening to Dr. Laura. Do you know who Dr. Laura is? Do you? Okay, I don't know who Dr. Laura is. Dr. Laura Schlessenberg or something like that. And she goes, have you guys heard of her? But yeah.
She's a radio psychologist.
Yes, right. And he goes, and she's always talking about these marital problems that people have. And at the end, and if somebody's on there for too long, she goes, would you just stop whining? Is that what she says? Yeah. He goes, and so Julie and I are talking about you, and she goes, that sounds just like Sandy. Just stop whining. Just move on and stop whining. He goes, I can just hear you right now. And she goes, we just started cracking up. We could just hear you. Just stop whining. Get on with life. So anyway, that's kind of it. Just move on. You know, it's like, what do you want to do? If you don't, okay, so let me just tell you this. When I was working at Transamerica, I weighed 40 pounds more than I do right now. 40 pounds more, right. I had too much work. I didn't work out enough. I didn't have too much stress, but I just didn't work out, and I just was enjoying life and going out to too many dinners and flying too many places, right? You know the routine, right? And after I got off work, it was like, okay, so now look around. What are you going to do? Well, I just said, well, I'm not going to weigh 40 extra pounds anymore. So I just said, okay, fine, change that. You can do anything you want to do in your life. Just decide you want to do it. Just figure it out. So I got off gluten, got off sugar. I still don't work out. But I don't have any stress. I never had any stress before. But just do what you want to do. Just figure out what is going to work for you to do what you want to do. I still don't work out. I don't like to work out. Okay? Okay, she's running around the room.
you appear to be on this big conquest, and you have this attitude of, never settle, which I love,
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah,
love.
I don't
so
ever settle.
what is the next big conquest that you have? Just another interesting.
Okay, so, I always had these bizarre dreams. I don't know where they came from, but I had this dream that I wanted to. One dream was to live in Texas. I don't know where that came from, but I always thought I was going to have a horse when I was little. We moved to Texas, and then I thought, okay, well, now I want to live in Beverly Hills. So we moved to Beverly Hills, and I built a dream home there. And then we sold that, and now we're living up near Portland, Oregon, and it rains every day. It's horrible. That was not my dream. That was my husband's dream. So now we're moving. We're moving now. We got approved to get an apartment. It's so funny. In Oregon, you have to get approved to get an apartment. So anyway, we're moving to Oregon now. But anyway, I always have these bizarre dreams. I always wanted to sit, from the time I was 28 years old, I wanted to sit on a mutual fund company board. Do you know that it took me 4 years to get a board seat? There are only 300 women in the entire United States that is a mutual fund director. 300. And some of them sit on multiple boards, multiple mutual fund company boards. That is so rare to get a mutual fund board seat. That is so rare. There are only 1,300 mutual fund directors in the entire United States. Now think about how rare that is. I had no idea. I just saw the statistics the other day. I had no idea. What an incredible opportunity that I got when I got that board seat. I didn't know that I was shooting for the moon. So anyway, I want to still sit on more corporate boards. Does everybody understand in here what a corporate board is? Is there anybody who doesn't understand what a corporate board is? Okay. So every company, every public company that has a president and a CEO, they all report to a board of directors in that company. And I'm one of those directors. Okay? So every company has one of those. I feel really honored to be one of those. So, okay.
I have always loved to work with people. I've always wanted to be a leader. And so I had my heart set on management. And if I want to enter the corporate world and become a leader, inspirer, what would be the best way? Is it smartest to start at the bottom and try to work your way up, or?
Thank
Or what's your other option?
Enter near the top, like you did, where they just, hey, would you like to be vice president? Or, excuse me. Sorry.
So you're only going to get to start at the bottom. I did too. You're only going to get to start at the bottom, and then you're going to have to prove yourself. That's the only way you get to do it.
Hi. I just want to say thank you for your time first
Yeah,
off.
you're welcome.
And so you were speaking earlier how you would get to work by 7 a.m. and then you would leave at 9 p.m. and you would just do it day in and day out. But then also I'm a human resources major, so we always talk about work-life balance.
Yeah.
So what would you say
Human resources people talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But what would you recommend, or as your past experience, how to achieve that work-life balance, and when in your career do you ever feel the most comfortable with it?
What do you mean?
So what I've heard from a lot of people is that when you first start out, I believe your first 1 to 5 years, you're grinding a lot and you're just getting in there, getting the experience as much as you possibly can. But then after that, it's supposed to get better. That's what I've heard, at least. And I was just wondering.
Well, it does. It does if you don't want to be at the top of the food chain. If you want to be at the very top of the food chain, you're going to keep working those hours.
Okay.
It just depends on how successful you want to be. I wanted to be at the top of the food chain. So I wanted to be at the very top of the food chain. So I'm going to put in those hours. I'm going to travel. I mean, my husband and I were both working hours like that. And he was traveling bi-coastal He lived here and he was in New York every other week. So, you know, he worked on Wall Street 20 years. So we put in hours like that. We didn't have kids. We just worked our fannies off for years and years and years. And he was at the top of the food chain too. And now he plays all the time. And we both do. So it's a matter of how far up in the food chain you want to be. If you want to stop at a vice president level, then that's fine. You don't have to put in those hours. But that's not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be on the board of directors. That was my goal. And you don't get to be one of 300 women in the United States by having work-life balance. Sorry, but that's the truth.
Very true.
Okay, now I have a question. What was your biggest challenge?
Okay. Managing change at the staff level was the biggest. Managing change at the staff level is the biggest issue, probably. Not managing change at the highest levels of the company. They expect change, but managing change at the staff level. So the way you do that is to involve them. So I would do like skip level meetings, like skip the manager level and go down to the staff level, bring them into my office. I met with every single person on my staff once a year. How can I, it's my job to make your job easier. What can I do to make your job easier? Or more productive, or whatever. And I would find things like, my computer screen doesn't work. They'd walk out of my office and have a new computer screen that day. You know, dumb stuff, right? The manager would tell them that we didn't have enough money to get a new computer screen, right? So, you know, every year I did skip level meetings, and we'd have lunches brought in, surprise lunches brought in, or Friday donut days, or, you know, just dumb stuff. It's just getting the buy-in from the staff. That's the biggest thing.
Hi, I teach in the MBA program. I teach human capital management, and tonight my recruitment class is here. So I would like to ask you a very focused question about recruitment in the current time. How has technology changed the way that you recruit? From the days when I used to work, when we put everything into the newspaper, all the jobs went into the newspaper and you sent paper resumes, which I like to entertain my students with talks about when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. But now, that isn't how people recruit anymore. So I'm just wondering what your current status is on using technology for recruitment.
So let me talk about recruiting from a whole different perspective. I had a staff of 75 in LA, and the rest of my 3,300 sales reps were across the nation, in their offices across the nation. And so one day I get a call from HR, we need to come see you immediately. You posted a job this morning, and we have 13 applicants, and we need to come see you. I said, okay. So they come up, and I'm like, oh, crap, what did I do wrong? Because you always hate it when HR calls, right? So they come up, and they said, and she goes, and I'm bringing 3 people with me. Okay, great. She goes, you have a free conference room? Yeah, sure. So she goes, we want to know what you're doing on your floor, because every time you post a job, you have 10 plus applicants every time. Everybody wants to work in your department. And I said, okay, so what's wrong with that? And they said, that's it. There's nothing wrong with it. You have more internal candidates that apply for your jobs that anybody in the whole company, you can get a job filled like that. How come? And I said, well, why does everybody apply for my jobs? She goes, everybody wants to work on your floor. What are you doing up here? She goes, we looked at all of the jobs in your department, and they're all technical jobs. You have to have licenses. You have to have, all these, you have all these parameters. And then we looked at your floor, and it's diverse. You have 50-50 gender diversity. You have diversity of culture. You have diversity of religion. You have, and I said, you're answering your own questions. I believe wholeheartedly in diversity. And I champion diversity in every single thing I do. And we reward people for doing a job in the best they can do it. And we train our people, and we encourage people to not talk bad about each other, and we reward positive mental attitude. And if you get every other manager to do it, every other person will have their jobs filled immediately. That's all it takes. And she goes, oh my God, this is so fabulous. So I didn't hire from outside. I hired from within. Yeah.
Hello? That's okay. Okay. Hi. First of all, thank you very much for being here. My name is Eddie, and one of the things I always like to focus on is on getting to know people more in, kind of like picking the brain. So I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, what is the last book that you read? And the second
you
one...
don't want to know.
now we don't want to know.
Now I'm curious. Even more curious. And the second one is, what is your favorite podcast or a podcast that you would recommend to undergraduate or graduate students?
Oh, God. Okay, so...
Last book.
Okay, the last book. So, okay, this is not going to be any surprise to anybody here. I'm probably blushing. I think our president is a misogynist, and I am thoroughly and completely disgusted with our administration right now. And so the last book I read was about our president, and it was all negative. And so I'm sorry. You asked me, I'm going to tell you straight out. I'm thoroughly, completely disgusted with everything that's happened with this administration and the way he treats women. I think it's disgusting, and so that's the last book I read. And I'm about to read Fear. I'm about to read Fear as soon as my husband finishes it. And he's only halfway through, and I keep threatening to take it away from him if he doesn't finish it very quickly. So that's the book I read. Podcasts, I don't do podcasts. I do a webinar a day, just about one webinar a day, and it's almost all technical. To do CPE, I do CPE on, my CPE by webinar. And that's how I stay current on my accounting. Bob Woodward. Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh-huh.
So since you asked about podcasts, there is actually a regional one, which is called 805 Conversations. I would highly recommend that to everybody. Every once in a while you'll find a CLU faculty member on a podcast, but it's a podcast coming out of Santa Barbara, just focusing on interesting people in our region. And I think the value of that is that these people are accessible. So if you listen to their podcasts, which are incredibly well done, you have a good chance of reaching out to these people and actually meeting them if you're interested. 805 Conversations. So, Sandy, maybe a final question.
Now that everybody knows my politics and everything,
No.
I'm afraid I'm just a little bit too honest.
I'm not going there.
Thank you.
Higher education is somewhat under attack, or at least there's criticism, right? what is the value of a 4-year degree? Should I get my master's degree? While I could get an 8-month or 8-week coding course and get a 6-figure job at Google. What is the value of higher education?
Higher education teaches you the way to think. It doesn't, I don't think higher education doesn't teach you a task. It teaches you a mental focus, a mental way to think. It's like, okay, so I learned COBOL programming, right? It doesn't teach me, my old COBOL programming doesn't teach me anything about technology today, but it teaches me a linear process, right? And that's what, and the way that I learned the old tax code doesn't teach me anything about taxes today, but it teaches me the way the tax code was written from before. So it's a process, and that's what I think higher education does, is it teaches you the way to research, the way to analyze, the way to process information and think about things and think about a structure. And that's what I think it helps us do, is to put some contextual framework around the way we learn and the way people have thought about learning and teaching and coaching, so that we have a framework for how we move forward in our business lives.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Sandy, for being with us. And I'm sure you'll have some time to network, right?
Yeah,
so practice your networking skills. Let me also thank you. Great questions. I'm incredibly proud of you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they put me on the spot.
I planted that one.
Oh, okay, good.
Susan, where's Susan? She's somewhere? She already had to go. I think our next event, our next Fireside Chat is in February. I believe it's February 20th, but we'll get that out to you, of course, again, through your clubs and organizations. Thanks for being here tonight. Thank you.